And, I tell you, it's just amazing. The news cycle never is dull in terms of the crazy stuff that we have to chronicle on this program. We covered all. Foreign affairs is one of the things that we like to focus in on because of the nature of so much of the misinformation that it persists in the corporate press. And so I want to turn now to that subject matter with someone who is a veteran of the CIA and the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. And he's the founder and managing partner of Berg Associates, established in 1998. He provided training to the U.S. military special operations community for 24 years. And his website says he's been vilified by the right and the left, which means he must be doing something right. We have Larry C. Johnson. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
Great. So I wanted to get your impressions on this midterm fiasco where you're still counting the votes. And you're someone who's talked about foreign policy for some time, and you've obviously been in foreign policy as a career in various capacities over the year. How in the world can we be policing the world spreading democracy if we can't get our printer settings right?
Yeah, I've seen elections in Honduras and Zimbabwe that were run in a more fair, free fashion. This is utter total embarrassment. And part of it's been made possible because of the animus amongst the establishment Republicans towards Donald Trump. They hate Trump, and so they would rather lose power, lose control over the Senate, the House, than have the prospect that people who are aligned with Donald Trump could come in and actually try to clean up the corruption that's endemic in Washington, D.C. I mean, you want to know how far the United States has fallen? So on the eve of World War II, we had roughly 750 ships, combat ships available. At the end of December of 1944, we had over 6,500 ships. Think about that. That meant the U.S. industry at the time was producing, on average, 147 ships every month. Now, if you want to produce an aircraft carrier, it's going to take 4 to 5 years, maybe 7 years. And on top of that, right now, the U.S. Navy combat ships are around 254, I believe. So, it's half of what we had on the eve of Pearl Harbor, and yet we persist with this nonsense. Oh, we got the greatest military in the world. We got the greatest electoral system in the world. We are so busy lying to ourselves that we fail to see how the world has changed around us. We've got an $800 billion military, almost $800 billion military, and GAO just came out with a report the other day that all aircraft and there's like 2 or 4 of 49 were able to meet their operational requirements. Everybody else was, broken down, not enough parts, not enough maintenance, personnel. It's just on and on and on. That we right now are behaving like a third world country that doesn't know how to light a fire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I mean, you've got some different posts on here on your website, sonar21.com, that maybe we could just use. You talk about if you think the United States is ready for a conventional war with Russia or China, think again. What would you say is the bottom line picture that folks at home need to know as our government is hell-bent, it seems, on doing everything they can to escalate brinkmanship, at least from all intents and purposes from what we can see?
So part of that article was inspired by that GAO report, talking about the lack of readiness on the part of all combat and support aircraft. So, for example, let's say, we've got to deploy troops to the border of Poland or into Ukraine in order to fight the Russians. How do we do that? We don't have a magic transporter. We have to put them on an airplane. And the airplane most likely to be used is the C-5M now. It used to, when I first saw it, when I was a 13-year-old boy, I was visiting Atlanta, Georgia. This was 1968. I saw the very first ones of the C-5A. Well, that aircraft is over 55 years old now, and it's constantly being broken down. Doesn't have enough spare parts, and they don't have enough maintenance personnel. Well, how are you supposed to haul the 101st or the 82nd, or you pick your military unit that you want to send to Poland or to Ukraine? Don't have any way to get them there. And so let's say at the same time we decide, oh my God, we got to send troops to Taiwan to defend Taiwan. We simply do not have the capability to do that anymore. And on top of it, our naval, one of our key strategic weapons is the aircraft carrier task force groups. And they are now vulnerable to what's called a hypersonic missile that both China and Russia have. The hypersonic missile travels at a speed that the air defense systems that are used on those ships cannot stop the hypersonic missile. So in other words, all of our 11 aircraft carriers could be sunk in a matter of minutes, and there's nothing we could do to stop it. So it's like, wake up, America. We've been kidding ourselves. We say, oh, we got the greatest military in the world. No, we have the most expensive military in the world. We've got the most top-heavy officer corps in the world. Do you realize you've got as many admirals in the Navy today with less than 350 ships, combat active ships? And that's about the same number of admirals that were in World War II when you had over 6,000 ships. And military personnel in World War II was close to 2 million sailors. Well, now we got about 300,000 sailors. So you got all these officers, and they're commanding fewer and fewer troops. Oh yes, and did I mention that all services are having trouble filling their quotas for recruitment because parents are waking up and realizing, I'm not going to send my kid into the woke military, where they're going to be more concerned about what pronouns they're using than whether or not they can accurately shoot a gun or be physically in condition to march several miles. It's just we've really created a big problem for ourselves.
Yeah, I want to turn to this matter in Ukraine. There's a story from mate.substack.com. Urging peace with Russia, top U.S. general challenges D.C.'s proxy wars. A series of leaks, including a call for diplomacy from General Mark Milley, show that some U.S. officials are ready for settlement in Ukraine. It goes on to say, in the New York Times, a disagreement has emerged at the highest levels of the U.S. government over whether to press Ukraine to seek a diplomatic end to its wars. Leading the call with talks with Moscow is General Mark Milley. So Milley has, quote, made the case in internal meetings that the Ukrainians have achieved about as much as they could reasonably expect on the battlefield before winter sets in, so they should try to cement their gains at the bargaining table. What do you think of that?
Hey, I thought Ukraine was winning. I thought, man, they've wiped out the Russians. The Russians are retreating. Oh, my God, it's over. Vladimir Putin's got cancer or Parkinson's or the heartbreak of psoriasis. Who knows? Maybe a bad case of acne. This story here tells you exactly what's going on. U.S. military officials are looking at the reality on the ground, and they're scared to death because Russia has the momentum. It started this operation back in February with only 250,000 troops going up against a 600,000-man Ukrainian army. So they were already at a disadvantage. They seized significant portions of the country, particularly Mariupol, that was taken in May. Well, now they've done a call up of reserves, and they're going to be adding by the end of this month, middle of December, 300,000 new troops into the fray. And at the same time, they've been, even though they withdrew from Kherson, and there was not a forced retreat. They were not under attack that they had to have people flee in panic. It was a tactical withdrawal to get across the river. Think of Kherson like New Orleans. You know, if you're in New Orleans with the Mississippi to your back, you don't have a lot of room to maneuver if you're going to be attacked. And how do you supply across that Mississippi River? Well, that's sort of the same thing the Russians were faced with. So Milley, this growing, let's call it chorus of leaks encouraging the Ukrainians to negotiate a deal and saying that they've accomplished probably all that they can, it's just further sign that despite the propaganda that's being constantly poured over the American people, claiming that Russia is losing, that Russia's suffering terrible casualties, that Russia's on the ropes, that the Ukrainians are defeating them, so simply not true. And because if it was true, if they really were winning, who in their right mind would call off the dogs? You know?
Right. Right. So do you think that this is going to... I was concerned with the fact that all these different... there was not a lot, but there was a couple pretty charismatic voices against the proxy war in Ukraine and other conflicts continuing that seemed to all of them got defeated, it looks like. And there's a few left in the Congress on the Republican side. There's virtually no voices for peace on the Democrat side anymore. But I thought with this midterm, they might use it as momentum to double down in that proxy war. What do you think? Do you think they're going to continue to double down, or do you think that a Mark Milley type perspective, if it's true that he wants to really bring this thing to a close, could actually prevail here?
Well, see, what Milley's missing is the money laundering that's going on. So this Bitcoin guy had this company
FTX.
that went bankrupt this last week. Okay, so follow the logic of what happened. The United States was sending these billions of dollars to Zelensky in Ukraine. Zelensky, in turn, went and invested that money in that Bitcoin company. I think it's called FTX. Then that Bitcoin company guy took that money, converted the funds that were given him by Zelensky, turned around and passed them back to the Democrat Party in the United States, was the second largest donor after George Soros. So this, again, what's been going on in Ukraine has just been an excuse for moving money to the Democrats.
Right.
I mean, it's really...
it was funny how that timing was. Right after the election was over, the whole thing just blew up. Like it was just, all right, that operation's done. FTX.
Yeah. So it's this is what we're looking at. The Republican Party should have been standing on the edge of its chairs and yelling at the top of their voice to stop this, because anything that Joe Biden thinks is a good idea, that should be a sign from God that it's the wrong thing to do. Right. There's nothing that Joe Biden stands for that's good for America. Nothing. And
now on the Republican side, we're looking at tomorrow being potentially an announcement to run for president from Trump, and this comes on with this midterm fiasco with certain things fizzling out, multiple people to blame. But there's a call, for a civility on the Republican side to unite around Trump. But then there's this call for DeSantis to overthrow Trump as the MAGA type Republican. But incidentally, DeSantis seems to be getting a lot of fundraising support from the Bush wing of the donor base of the Republican Party. Does that signal to you that DeSantis could be someone who would be playing along with the neocon establishment on foreign policy?
Yeah, potentially. He's already infiltrated one of his the women in his press office she was registered as a foreign agent for this guy Saakashvili, who was a Georgian but was working with Zelensky in Ukraine. Now, do you believe in coincidence? I'm a Florida resident, and I love Ron DeSantis, but this a lot of this is bait that's being thrown into the water for Republicans to get them chasing their tails and chasing squirrels. Because remember last week, Trump was going to announce on Monday. No. He's going to announce on Tuesday. No. Now he's going to announce tomorrow, Tuesday, really, for sure. Well, maybe he does. But if he doesn't announce tomorrow night, let me suggest to you that what's going on is those stories are being fed by people with a different agenda. The thing I find so amusing, they're talking about Ron DeSantis he can get it done. He can win the support that Donald Trump cannot. If you think for a minute that the Democrats are going to hold back and not attack Ron DeSantis in the same despicable way that they've gone after Donald Trump, you've fallen off the turnip truck. They are going to blister him. They call him a racist. He'll be an anti-Semite. They've done this to everybody. They forget, back when John McCain was the lovable maverick and all the Democrats loved John McCain. And then once McCain was nominated for president as a Republican, he became the spawn of Satan. Yeah. So it's just, people just need to, wake up and realize that there is no myth. If Jesus Christ himself came back and decided to declare as a Republican presidential campaign, he would be relentlessly attacked because his 12 disciples were all white guys. I mean, it's just, please, it's ridiculous, it's absurd, and people need to wake up and just understand the full implications of what the current political situation is.
I mean, you worked in the CIA. A lot of people believe that a lot of these different McWoke ideas, whether it's gender annihilation, whether it's playing games about rewriting history to make it always about a race, a war between people, all this stuff is a deliberate injection of ideas that the intelligence community itself funded and put into the zeitgeist. Back in the day, they tried to take the anti-war movement, Vietnam, and direct it into drug culture and postmodern art and all kinds of insane stuff. Herbert Marcuse was a member of the OSS. He's the founder of a lot of this, critical theory idea that has morphed into what we see today. How much of what we see is a product of our own government waging psychological war against the integrity of the family and the integrity of civility between different ethnic groups in America?
I don't think it's the intelligence community, because candidly, the intelligence community is not that intelligent. What you're looking at is the pervasive influence of certain of major, large international foundations, charitable foundations, ostensibly set up that have in fact encouraged and promoted these kinds of cultural changes. The Clinton Foundation is just an example of those, but you've seen it from other major corporations that are associated with some of the wealthiest families in the United States, and that money has been spent in ways to undermine culture in the United States, to undermine the history.
We're speaking with Larry Johnson, who's a veteran of the CIA and special ops training, and his website is sonar21.com. It's a son of the New American Revolution is the name of his website, but you can go there at sonar21.com. But it's true that it seems like the most powerful foundations are hell-bent on playing God with human beings, trying to remake what it means to be a human. What does it mean to be a male or female? What does it mean to be a child? What does it mean to be all these different things that a family that were supposed to be foundational to what it means to be human? And a lot of these wealthy foundations have been running a lot of awful antisocial marketing campaigns against our culture. And I think the fruits of that rotten endeavor are pretty much abundant today. So, Larry, how do you square the CIA adopting this woke language? You're saying, no, that's not evidence that they've been kind of seeding this stuff all along. They're just getting on the bandwagon because it's the fashionable thing from the foundation world?
Yeah. They've been corrupted and co-opted by it as well. The fact, seeing the changes have crept in. Example, when I went in 1985, you still had to take a polygraph to verify that you were not a closeted homosexual. The reason for that was they felt that closeted homosexuals would be extremely vulnerable to blackmail. And yet, I know that even at the time, one of the most senior guys in the Directorate of Operations, who was in charge of spying against the Soviets, his name was Burton, first name Burton. Turns out he was a closeted homosexual, and so he took the polygraph year after year and was never found out. But at the time, you had to pass that polygraph, or else they would exclude you. Now, what happened during the Clinton days is they lifted that restriction, and openly recruited homosexuals. And as a result, they used to have I was told, an annual event where all the lesbians would ride their motorcycles around the headquarters building there in McLean, Virginia. It was called Dykes on Bikes. I mean,
now you have to take a polygraph test to see if you're a closeted heterosexual with the CIA, right?
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, there have been almost prohibitions against hiring straight, heterosexual Caucasian men.
Larry, we're out of time. Thanks again for joining us as always, and I want folks to check out sonar21.com for more of your blog comments. It's very interesting.